Father, thank you again. And I'm so excited. I was just saying before you came on that your new book is out, from what I understand. And we're going to talk about that book. And all of the people who have been listening and watching the videos from the conference are going, when is the book coming out? Well, can you share a little bit about when it's coming and what the book's all about?
Well, that's very interesting, actually. Jesse, you know the Norbertines. Well, one of my spiritual director is a Norbertine,
Ah,
and so I was had just completed a book, and I told him, he's as my spiritual director. I said, "What book do you think I should write next?" I told him I really wanted to do this book on modesty, and he says, "No, you don't." He said, "You write the book on spiritual warfare because that's your vocation." So I said, okay. And it took me 3 years to write it. There's actually two versions of the book.
really?
The reason it took me so long is the priest's version is 828 pages long.
Oh my gosh.
So that's the one. And then the lay version is 563 pages. So we removed about 280 pages. The reason we removed that is we call it the CSI effect. We didn't want people reading it and then coming and mimicking what they read, so it complicated the diagnostic. But the one for the laity, which is just called Dominion, is actually it's very extensive. It's probably the most extensive thing that any layman would ever read on the subject, and it's a bit technical, but it's doable. I mean, people can get through it without too much difficulty. And I actually have a copy of it. I got to tell you a little bit of a story about this thing. It's so funny. I ordered the proof copy to make sure that everything was okay.
Yep.
Right. Well, they sent it to me, and then I was told it was delivered. Well, it wasn't delivered at my house. So then I went to the post office and no, it's not here. And then I got a text from UPS, and this is what the text was. The package has been damaged. All merchandise has been discarded, and the sender will be notified.
I love it. That's great.
So I ended up reordering it, which delayed its getting out. And then, of course, now the guy that does my website, he's delayed for a week, but you can get it on Amazon right now. It is available on Amazon. In about 3 weeks, it'll be available through my press site, which is Sentrad Press, SENTRADPRESS.com.
Father, what are you teaching in this book? Essentially, what's the essence of what you're teaching lay people throughout this book, Dominion?
Yeah, so basically what it is it's a discussion of the nature of angels, nature of demons, how demons function, both on the spiritual warfare side of it, how they function psychologically, the different kinds of diabolic influence like obsession, oppression, and possession. It's kind of interesting because the priest version, the chapter on possession is 208 pages, and in the lay version, it's only 75. So, but anyway, but it is one of those things that, so I discuss all the different kinds of diabolic influence, also the general means of spiritual combat, how you combat them, what to watch for, and then also what to do in order to address it. Things like sacramentals, the sacraments, things like that are all in there.
Father, do you also talk about the proper authority structure set up by God in the book and the way angels and demons understand that authority structure?
Yes, I do. In fact, in this, chapter 4 deals with the authority structure, and it's in the lay version, it is practically speaking unchanged from the priest version. And it's about 80 pages long. So, and it deals with precisely what the authority structure is, how demons work within it, and how to make sure you stay within it so that you don't get retaliated against.
Father, so the main sources that you draw from to write this book, Dominion, if people would look at your footnotes, what would you say your top heavy on your sources?
Well, as far as the nature and psychology of diabolic influence, that primarily comes from two sources. One is St. Thomas, because he had written in his earlier work, you don't see it so much in the Summa, it's in the work, his commentary on Peter Lombard's sentences is where he really gets into the psychology of how demons and angels function. So it comes from there. And then also just general observation, having been an exorcist for 15 years, just watching them. But then there is the bibliography, which I use to draw. This is people are going to be a little surprised because I'm drawing literally from the entire history of the church. The bibliography is 12 pages long.
Wow.
So this is, then the reason I did it, the reason I wrote it is there had never been anybody who had really done a synthesis of the Catholic theology and all of this in relationship to that throughout time. And so that's why it's pretty extensive in the research and in the actual writing of it.
Father, why did you call it Dominion specifically? Why did you choose that title?
Part is that I don't just kind of like, what am I going to call this thing? And what I really began to realize is that it's really the spiritual warfare is about dominion. Whose dominion going to be under? God's or the demons? And that's what demons are constantly struggling for is dominion over us. And so that's why I decided just to call it that.
Who did the cover? Show us the cover one more time. It's beautiful. It's got like it's a statue of a gargoyle or an angel. What is that, Father? Describe it to us.
This is actually a statue of Saint Michael.
Okay.
That overlooks a city in Europe. And so I decided to do that in the sense of I wanted something of Saint Michael on the cover. And then I decided to put that one on because I think it kind of sets the tone that this is serious business and that we need to pay attention to it.
Order the book, Dominion, from Sensus Traditionis Press, Father Ripperger's new book. This should be something that every Catholic should have in their home. Read it and try to inculcate the contents of this book and protect your house. Father, as you were talking about, you've known people that kind of set up these deliverance ministries on their own. You're talking about people in Omaha, and you were saying the possible consequences of operating outside of your authority. What are they?
Well, it's diabolic retaliation. So if you do something that you're not have the authority to do, the demons know you're stepping outside that authority, and it's disorder, and it falls under their domain, so to speak. And so they will take you to the woodshed. We've seen this happen over and over again. But whereas if you're working within the authorities, just before the first part ended, I was just mentioning that authority is done to provide and to protect, and that means that's the way God structured it according to the natural law. So if you work within that, if you're functioning as doing what you're supposed to do within your own authority, God will provide and protect not just you, but those under you. And so because that's the way he designed it. Whereas if you step out from underneath that, then you can become subject to diabolic influence.
Got it. Father Chad, St. Alphonsus Liguori, a doctor of the church, said only God knows how much good can come from a good Catholic book. And this is one of those. I know because at much of your talks over at the Spiritual Warfare Conference, you mentioned this book several times. Now, my question is for mom and dad who are listening and saying, my son is acting weird. We've got something that's definitely a problem going on, and I'm not sure what to do. Is it spiritual? Is it mental? Is it, both? And so my question, would this book also be good for mom and dad to get, their feet planted in a plan of action to help their son or daughter?
It will in two ways, in the sense it'll give them a better knowledge of how the spiritual or how the spiritual warfare actually works, so that they're more likely to be able to take a look at it and see whether something is actually spiritual or psychological. The second point is it'll also provide them with means by which they can start praying for doing certain things, praying for him.
Father, is this a good basic way to help people? Here's when people talk about, I'm having nightmares, I'm having these temptations, inner temptations, etc. I just tell Catholics, I said, go to this website, auxiliumchristianorum.org, read the requirements, okay? And then you have to follow those requirements. Specifically, you got to return to a life of sanctifying grace.
That's right.
Then I tell them, once you do so, read the other link there that says frequently asked questions, because a lot of the questions that you're asking are already answered there by several exorcists. So that's the second thing I tell them. Read the FAQ on Exilium Christianorum and follow the requirements, daily rosary, return to the sacraments, etc. And then start those prayers called Exilium Christianorum once a day at least. Right. And I find that a lot of people, Father, that I've been giving that simple advice right there, that simple advice, they call me up weeks, months later. They say, Jess, Everything's cleared up in my house. My kids aren't having nightmares. My kids not smoking pot no more. My spouse returned back to Mass with me. I just followed what you told me. Return to a state of grace. Follow the requirements on that Exilium Christendom website, the 8 things you should be doing as a Catholic. I read the frequently asked questions so I can get an understanding of spiritual warfare. And I started those prayers every evening before I go to bed after the rosary, and things cleared up in my house. Father, did you put up that website? Was it you and several other exorcists that put up that website?
Actually, it was me and one other exorcist. I mean, I haven't really mentioned too publicly that I was one of the guys that started it. It was me and one of the exorcists that trained me. We put it up. Ironically, we did it primarily because we noticed that people were getting involved in the charismatic renewal, that were doing certain things that was causing them to have troubles. And so we put this up for people to start praying for each other. And so obviously some of the frequently asked questions are based upon what I had learned from other exorcists and what this other priest knew. So and it's kind of funny that the thought as you were describing it, Jesse, that kept running through my mind was, who would have ever thought that if you just led a Catholic life, the demons would actually leave you alone?
Yeah. Father, in your book, let me ask you this question about angels, because you talked about good angels, bad angels. I'm assuming that you go into why it's so important that you collaborate with your guardian angel in protecting you from the devil.
Yeah, I actually have an entire section of the book on your guardian angel.
Good.
And then also the different guardian angels, like families, cities, parishes, that states, nations, that type of thing. And so, and the necessity of, or the advantage of actually invoking them for protection. So I do go into all of that.
Good.
Father, regarding the St. Michael the Archangel prayer, the long form, the one that only the bishop and a designated priest are allowed to pray, I read several years ago that when Pope Leo XIII wrote that, maybe you can correct me, see if my memory serves you correct, that if a bishop prays that prayer over places, localities, or cities, it has the power to drive demons away. Is that what Pope Leo XIII taught?
Yeah, that's actually correct. In fact, in some of the old rituals, you'll actually see it's actually, I mean, the technical title is Exorcism of Apostate Angels, but it also, in some rituals, it was actually called Exorcisms of a Place. So, and as a result, it can actually be used either over people or even over places. And there has been some bishops, as you know, there have been some bishops that have been doing that. I've recommended to some bishops, hey, you should be doing chapter 3. That's the exorcism, which you just mentioned. You should be doing that like every day or at least once a week over your diocese as a general rule. I always tell them, though, you have to be careful. You have to be prepared for the fact that you're gonna be stirring things up. So you're gonna clean up a bunch of stuff, but you also have to be prepared for the fact that, and it all usually comes in the form of somebody you would least expect will start causing you problems. But that's just a good sign. It means that you can get it cleaned up. But yeah, and we also, some bishops wanted to do something more expensive. So there was a ritual from the Meckline Rituale, which basically was exorcism of a house, which takes about 30 minutes. And what I did is I modified it for a diocese, and some bishops have been using that to exorcise their dioceses.
Well, let me just mention Bishop Joseph Strickland will be interviewing, we'll have you on his show, folks, for those who are listening. The Bishop Strickland Hour is on every Tuesday, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, California time. And I know, talking to the bishop, he's looking to do the kind of things you're talking about. So, Father Chad, I'm sure you're going to be able to help him with that.
Right.
Getting back to your book, Father, it seems like the book has so much rich teachings on St. Thomas, which I have to be honest with you, it seems like we've had a lack of Thomistic teaching the last 60 years. And it sounds to me like you're bringing a lot of Thomistic philosophy in regards to spiritual warfare that maybe we haven't heard for 60 years.